Perfect. Okay. I don't know where that came from, but I'm glad I had that light bulb moment. So we're going to do that. We're also then going to talk about what interventions you already have in place or that we might need to start thinking about for data that's related to course failures. We are going to have a conversation about your behavior data because we know that's a little bit different for you than it would be for traditional brick and mortar. So we'll make sure that we address that also. And we have to work on that rubric. If you guys remember the rubric that Amy presented to us when we were all together at the regional meeting, each quarter meeting that we have, we're supposed to go through and complete the rubric together and then submit that for the project. So today will be our first go at that. And so we will work through that as well. And then the last thing on the list is completing and submitting the early warning data report. And we may or may not get to that. That's something that Becca, Chelsea, and I can make sure is done after the meeting if we are running short on time. So that's just turning in the numbers, so to speak. Does anybody have questions or anything else that you feel we might want to make sure we cover today or add to the agenda? No. Okay. So with that, if we can, I'm going to move us down to, so this process is really cyclical. And so when we left off last time, we left off talking about action steps and interventions and what was going to be taking place. So I'd like to pick up where we left off, which would be taking us all the way down to this evaluate and refine and talk about the action steps that we had from the last meeting. So what we had decided on at the last meeting was that sharing attendance of new students to teachers via conversations during TBT time and getting the data to the teachers to track. So one, if we could talk about how that went, barriers, successes in that, and then figuring out how to organize and track the information easily and making that manageable to teachers. And so we knew that our 9th and 10th grade principals were going to communicate that to our 11th and 12th grade principals and kind of move that process forward. So if we could, somebody want to open the conversation with how that went or is going.
Yeah, so I'm Marie Mueller. I'm the 9th grade principal. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of our team members here absent. So Andrea, our 10th grade principal, was unable to be on the meeting today. So we did, from our last meeting, we updated the 11th and 12th grade principals, just what this team is doing, what we're looking at, and the purpose of it. As well as adding in those expectations into the TBTs. We may have misunderstood because we've not brought this to the teachers yet. We just looked at, I thought our ending goal, or at least what I had down on my notes, was just to figure out the way that we were going to get the information to the teachers. So we've looked at that. We connected, or at least I did. I connected with Courtney Ray, and she was able to give me the spreadsheet of information that we dug into. And we identified it's not something that's being flagged or on like a attendance report or something along those lines that teachers already have access to. So this will be something that we will have to pull separately, not difficult. We're going to be able to take what Courtney provides us and flip it into a course report, which will allow all the teachers just to filter for themselves and identify the students that are currently being flagged. So that is where we have left off. The plan is that we are going to get this into TBTs. The earliest I think that it makes sense to introduce this to the TBTs in my mind is during once we get started second semester, that it would be one of our to do more of the engagement TBT that middle school is doing. So my next steps from here would be creating not necessarily the TBT document, but at least the guidance on what do we want them to do with this information, as far as all of our staff they're all well versed in Excel. They're used to working in Excel. So providing them with the spreadsheet, filtering for themselves, identifying those students, that should be the easiest task. But the task that our staff struggle with, right, is now what do we do with the data, and what are we going to want them to dig into? So I feel like that's our next step in the process, that we gotta put together like a engagement TBT focus form that will help guide them through some of those conversations or discussions. I'm curious, and I've not reached out to Sam, and she's not here today. If they do anything at the middle school different, or add any additional questions or things like that on their TBT form that maybe we could piggyback off of. Um, so yeah, so that is my thought, is that, and like Courtney said, these lists are going to change as we continue to pull the data. So I would, in my mind, we'll correlate when we're going to have the new data. That's when we'll pull the spreadsheet, and that's when we'll ask our teachers to have their engagement TBT to identify who these students are, have their discussions around them, and then what action steps they're going to take, knowing the information they're getting about these students. So that's kind of where we've left off. Um,
Yeah,
it's just really, yeah, looking at those lists. So hopefully that helps. I don't know if we were supposed to do more. If we were, I'm sorry, but that's
no,
where we are.
no, thank you, Marie. You brought up Sam, so I wanted to kind of speak on her behalf. I talked to the folks that are out, just so I could kind of message, present their message to everybody. And it's basically the same, Marie. Sam is a little bit of ahead because she had started this process back in the spring last year, but it's almost identical. Everybody's is almost an identical process. I believe Sam's teachers do already know about it, whereas everyone else, every other leader, since starting this program, they're just in the discussion phases of it. Like Marie said, they were obviously wanted to talk it through with each other, or, really think about this before they just presented it at the very first TBT. So I would say that's her messaging. Marie's kind of like where she's at is where everybody's at.
Good. Great progress. Yeah, it is great progress. And I think you're right on track, Marie. It wasn't about teachers actually digging in yet to do anything with that information. So if that's how I presented that, I apologize. But you are, yes, getting the information to figuring out how you're going to get that information to the teachers, figuring out what you want the teachers to do with that information. One follow-up thing that came to mind as you were talking, and thinking about your middle school principal, is what does this look like, or is there a written process yet for this, or is that part of this next step, like getting it into, I think you had talked about getting a guidance, creating TBT guidance, and so I think that that's a great idea in terms of having something for teachers to know process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our teachers function well when we give them more guidance than less,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to TBTs. It's been something that we're constantly working on to help, just with digging into the course data and identifying the places that they want to adjust and change. So I know with looking at the student data, they're going to want to also have some clear expectations. The other part at the high school level, which is different than the middle school, they work more in pods. So they'll have 4 teachers or however many, six probably now with science and history, that are all kind of focused in on the same group of students. Where at the high school, students still have 6 teachers, but they're not all, they don't all have the same English, math, science, and social studies. They're not working in those pods. So it's going to be adjusting and addressing. We might not necessarily want all 6 teachers making a phone call home to every single student on that list. That's going to be very overwhelming for those students and families. So that's the piece that I've been trying to think through, is how are we going to help guide this so that we're not doing overkill then because of having them focus in on this. So how can we kind of figure that piece out? I think it's easier at the middle school, just because they're all kind of focusing in, they're all connected to the same students. So the math teacher might say, I'll take these two to call, and the science teacher says, I'll take these two. It makes it a little bit more organic where we're not going to have that piece. When those teachers are coming together in those TBTs, they're, at least the way we have them set up now, they're going to be with their other subject area teachers. So all the Algebra 1 teachers together, they're all going to have different students on their list. So, yeah.
Okay. I'll be quiet for a minute. Anybody have anything to add to that or thoughts about the communication piece of it? Yeah. Ideas on how to, like you said, not have that overkill of contacting the same family 6 times.
I think it would just take good, strong communication with each other, you know, maybe just not necessarily like Marie said that the high school works in pods, but group some teachers together so that they can stay in strong communication as a small group so that they're not overwhelming the families or, you know, families getting a call from one teacher and then another teacher the very next day. I would just say strong communication is probably the number one factor in getting this off the ground.
I would agree. And I think as you're building that written process, right, those
And
things,
guidance,
that
like Marie said,
communication
yeah.
plan goes into that, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So to move us forward from here, can we capture 1 or 2 action steps, Marie, that you or anyone in the group for moving this forward? So what's next? We've talked about what we're, what you want to do and where you're headed with this. If we could take just a couple little things that we could, you could take back and move forward. What comes next for you or for the team? I think I saw Andrea jump on maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Good
Yeah.
morning.
So, just to kind of go off what Marie said, I think that this is, just a very, very basic first step, but we need to maybe take a current attendance report and pull it in and see what it looks like. And, what is it that we want it to look like that's going to be user friendly and easy for teachers to sort or filter, making sure that we have the whole teaching team involved and intervention specialists and everyone that would have the opportunity to work with these kids would be able to sort for themselves, manageable, and just, having just the information we need for this purpose. So, if there are things that are important, I won't say unnecessary things that are important in the attendance report, but for this purpose, as we're adding things in, is there things we want to take out? So that way teachers are focusing on just what they need, just finding out what it is that we even want to send to them, and then also working together to develop what that procedure and process will be for the teachers too, like the logistical background stuff, so that when we present it to them, we're prepared, we know what we're looking for, we can clearly explain our expectations. I think this will be something that we will need to kind of explain, verbally in a staff meeting and also on paper, because we really want to get everyone on the same page. So I'm thinking just a lot of those logistical pieces to get everything in place so that as we are starting to work on this and we're working with teams, we have the bases covered on our end and we're going in strong.
Yeah.
It's a rollout plan.
Yes. A plan to roll out. And again, clear expectations for what's expected of your teachers is definitely gonna pay off in the long run. April mentioned in the comments that having to streamline the message to parents. I'm I'm guessing to parents, right? So that it's consistent across the board. And then there was a suggestion of possibly a loose script. So again, making sure that we're using common language or, getting the same message across to everyone. Thoughts about that? Aaron suggested templates can be good in cases such as this, as long as you can also keep a personal touch to help grow those relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Our staff at the high school, we have the advising team who really oversees students' attendance. Our teachers really focus in more on just their specific course and the academics piece of it. So I think having these templates, I think that's a good idea. I guess I'm thinking more state testing. We give our teachers those templates there as well, where they're able to have that kind of the basis of what we're wanting to send or what we're wanting them to do, and then they can personalize it. So that is something that we could definitely add in. But like Andrea said, I think it's going to be planning out the meeting and really making sure that we're not giving the teachers too much information that it's so overwhelming on that spreadsheet, but just the information that they need because they're not used to receiving an attendance spreadsheet and things like that. So it's going to be keeping it simple enough for them to be able to pick it up and identify who those kids are and then take action on it. So yeah, I think this all sounds good.
Okay. Anybody else have anything that they have questions about or would like clarification on anything regarding following up where we are with the attendance piece before we move into new data? Anything we may have missed? Or thank you so much, Marie and Andrea, for the work that you guys are putting into this and the thought that you're giving all of these things. It's good work. It's good progress. Okay, so I think then what we will do is we will move back to the top of our agenda, right? We're going to go back to step 1 and we're going to look at some new data as it relates to specifically course failure, and we'll have that conversation around what behavior looks like for OHVA and for students in your district. So I did grant Courtney and Sharon, I'm not sure how you guys want to move forward, but everybody has permission to share. So, and I believe everybody has access to the data. You can pull it up on your own too, if that works for you, where you're at. But if we could pull up the new data for Q1 and take a look at that and give everybody an opportunity to see the new Q1 data.
I am happy to let Sharon drive since I really just sent the attendance data to Sharon.
Okay.
You want me to upload or share my screen for the data that we've shared?
Sure. Yep. If you wouldn't mind sharing that data and maybe just walking us through some of the information,
Okay.
that would be great.
Are you able to see the screen? Yes. I got you. Okay. Thank you. So I think I just worked through the steps that were sent out for the overall data for how many high school students we have and how many high schools with students with disabilities. And then took the attendance data and just put that into how many 9th graders, and also again 9th, 10th, and 11th and 12th graders, and then again with the students with disabilities, and then broke that down, looked at their course performance, giving you the overall numbers, and then the percentage of students that fall within that, breaking it down again, 9th through 12th grade, and then students with disabilities, and then broke it down a little bit further with math and ELA. And then just did an overall analysis of how many students were met one criteria risk, how many met two, and then we didn't do a third just because we didn't have that behavior piece. So this is kind of where I put everybody into their categories and just filtered through to see what our numbers and then percentages were. And then I went back and did how many new students this school year in first quarter that we had that were off track, and then also returning students. And then worked with Lauren to get the CTE students and also did the same for the CTE students. That's very brief overview. Any questions?
That is
Yeah.
great, Sharon.
I'm
Can,
sorry.
this is wonderful, Sharon. Can I ask just a clarifying question over the course performance?
Yeah.
So like, will you have like ninth graders failed any course? Is that where they currently are in their courses now? Or I guess where is the course performance? Can you just explain that a little bit more?
Sure. I pulled the at the end of first quarter, I pulled their grades off of the D2L detailed report, and any student who failed any course was put into this number. And then it was broken down. So this is course performance is the overall. So any student that failed any course, and then we broke it down and just singled out math and ELA.
Thank you. So that first one is that they have at least one course failing.
Yeah.
That's where that 48%.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anything
Thank
other
you.
than math and ELA as well.
Okay. Thank you. That is helpful. This looks great.
Thank you. Any other
Any-
questions about that?
Becca, I think you mentioned to me the behavior piece, right? And that's gonna, I guess maybe can talk about how that might look for us, because it looks a lot different than than a typical brick and mortar, right? We don't have that typical behavior. I think, did you have some conversations, Becca, on how that might
Yeah,
look?
I think that we're going to get to that in the agenda. Is that?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So Chrissy, you are like 3 steps ahead. So.
All right, sounds good.
And I think the conversation is just that, right? Like the way that behavior is tracked, or what is a behavior concern for OHVA, is different than, or appears to be different than, what it is in traditional, which is fine. I think that if behavior isn't something that stands out as an area of concern, the conversation here during DLT meetings is different than, we just have to know that we still need to report those numbers for behavior for the project's sake, but we can have that conversation that my understanding is behavior is around truancy typically. And if there's additional information that needs to be, discussed about what goes into behavior data, let's have that. But if behavior is not the area of concern that we're worried about for students being at risk of graduation because of that, and the other piece that I feel like it leads into the attendance piece, right? If we're getting kids who are truant and we're working on the other attendance issue, we might be taking care of it from the back door, so to speak. Thoughts on that? Am I on track with that thought for behavior? Anyone?
Looking in, I think it makes sense, but I would love to hear what.
Yeah, I
Team
think it makes
points.
sense to me.
Okay. So while we know it's an indicator, you're typically not suspending and expelling students because of poor behavior. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yeah,
That is
not
correct.
typical. It does happen, right? But even so, the suspension looks very different here, right? Many times, I don't want to say many times because we don't have many of them, but when it does happen, like let's say a suspension, right? it looks more like an in-school suspension per se, because when that happens, it's typical that the student is suspended from live classes. And so, but they still have access to the curriculum. They still have access to everything, all that online. They're just typically suspended from live classes because that's where we see those behaviors happen. Being inappropriate on camera, being inappropriate in the chat, those type of things. So even a suspension is more like an in-school suspension. I don't think I've ever in my time here, and Andrea or Marie, anybody, I don't think I've been a part of a student being expelled. So that's even what it looks like here.
Okay.
And Christy, I know you were involved because an MD meeting was necessary, but we recently suspended a student, and just as Christy said, she was an 11th grader who was misusing school property more than once after some guidance, and so she also, as Christy mentioned, access to her curriculum, no live access, also no clubs for the period of time that she was suspended, no extracurricular online or face-to-face events or anything like that. It was just a 5-day time period, but it is very different in our environment. I agree.
So I just want to remind you that when Becca inputs the data that we need to put in for this project, those are the behavior numbers that she will need in order to enter into that data.
Okay.
So it's either in school or out of school suspension. However that looks for your district, we just need to report those.
Okay. And Becca, I get that information, and I don't know if, this would be helpful. Monthly, I have to send data into OCCS in regards to, our enrollment, how many staff we have, all of that. And part of that includes MD meetings, in-school suspensions, those type of things. So I can include you that on the monthly piece, if that would help with that
Yes.
data.
Yes, that would help. Thank you.
Sure.
Yep. I think that takes care of that. Good. Okay. Let's go back to, so Sharon, was there anything on that slide deck that is different than what's in front of us?
On the slide,
Uh,
for the visual that I had sent previously.
Yes. Yes. Is that all included in what we're looking at in the other sheet?
The visual with the bar graph, is that what you're referring to? I'm sorry.
Yes, it is.
So that did not have this last bit of information with the new students and the returning students and the CTE students, but I can definitely add that if that would be helpful.
I just wasn't sure if that was different data that we needed to look at in addition to what's on here that you're sharing currently, or if this includes that. Does that make sense?
This bar graph here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that this is just the overall performance. And I think the last meeting we had, this was shared with us in a different, I forget the person who was in the last meeting. He had shared this as an example. And so I actually just recreated it for our purposes. And it just had the overall course performance, attendance, and then the math and ELA were called out, and then the behavior. So I can pop in that behavior piece when we get that data.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
So if we go back to, if you wouldn't mind pulling back up all of the cumulative data from Q1, if we could take a look at this as a team, and then let's just start by talking about what is it that we notice? What is this data off the bat telling us? And we can just start recording some of our ahas from taking a look at this data. Things that stand out to you.
I would say something that stands out to me personally, course failure. is higher than I thought it would be.
Okay.
Shanna said it seems that new students are at more at risk than returning, and ninth graders are struggling with attendance, is what April noticed.
Okay.
When we look at our students with disabilities compared to the course performance and we look at failing, they're failing at a higher rate. So like 48 to 56% for ninth graders in that top box.
Ninth graders have a higher failure percentage. Something. Yep. Okay. What else?
So my question, I guess I would be what, for the high school principals, what happens in 11th grade for students with disabilities that are failing courses? Because that's a pretty big jump, and then it goes down in 12th grade a bit.
Well, I will say the American Lit course is really difficult. I would like to
Well,
like
And
to
this
see
is also a year where some students start Algebra 2, which we know is a big hang up too. Some of our students take that as seniors if they were on the 2-year algebra track, but Algebra 1 track, but that is a difficult course as well for students, as we know. That's a year often where a lot of kids need to earn their advanced science credit. You know, they got the physical science and the biology under their belt. It's a year, I was thinking a little bit about too, about kind of like it's an age where kids either start working or have more response. We have a lot of students with more responsibility at home. I'm kind of just talking while I'm thinking. I probably should have thought about that less, thought more, but
No, those are some good things to think about. And it would be interesting with that, with, I mean, targeting that, what can we do different in 11th grade, or what can our, intervention specialists help with, or school counselors in 11th grade, or, those type of things, because that's a big jump right there.
yeah, and I think too, I'm curious to know, like looking at even teacher level data and things and seeing if there's, because there's, many teachers that teach the same area, and looking at those who have co-teachers, who the co-teachers are, how are they collaborating, how are they supporting each other, how is that SDI delivered in that English and math. Obviously that doesn't apply to the social studies and science courses, but if we were able to dig into that just a little bit deeper, maybe we could identify if it's happening in a certain class or if it's kind of content wide, and kind of be able to drive conversations with the TBTs with that information.
Great conversation, you guys. Andrea, so I like what you said, like so that was my next question. Is there more information that we need? Is there other, what else do we need in order to know more behind the numbers? So when you talk about figuring out the co-teaching collaboration or the SDI that's happening in ELA and math, what would that look like? Like, how would you go about getting that information?
So we do have some ability within our systems to, take a lot of the data. It's one of the beauties of being virtual is that everything is through a click somewhere, right? So it can be registered somehow. So we do have some tools where we can look at, a particular subject, a particular teacher, and just kind of gather those numbers. It's just a matter of working through the different teams. And if we were specifically focusing on students who are with special education, that are our special education population, like we mentioned here, where this kind of stemmed from. There are specific teachers that work with them alongside specific ISs, and we could narrow in on that. We could look at the broader picture in these math and English courses. It's something that's kind of on my list anyways. We're mid-semester to see where some of our red flag areas might be and how we need to intervene as we're moving into November a little bit, approaching the end of the semester, which is crazy to think about. But some things just to consider. We do have access to this type of data. It is something that when I gather it, I probably look at I'm just thinking about like ways to organize it so that it's useful for everyone, but that's something I can think through a little bit. I want it to make sense to everyone, all players on the team.
Sure. What else stands out to anyone? Is there anything different that we haven't covered that relates to maybe even the number of criteria being considered for at-risk percentage-wise, your CTE student population? So our focus group for attendance was really looking at the new group, right? The students who are new to OHVA as it relates to attendance. We've mentioned two different things when we're talking about course performance. So I've heard students with disabilities being an area, and also new students new to OHVA also are in that struggling category a little bit more than those who are returning. So thinking about that, is there an area that we want to put our efforts toward in relation to either of those, or a specific grade level? What does that feel like for all of you?
Think to myself about, and Marie's a ninth grade principal, so Marie, please weigh in or provide further guidance on this. And I haven't seen any data recently, but I know in the past I've seen, we've seen the data of kids who fail ninth grade English or who fail ninth grade math or have the extremely lower percent chance of graduating when they get behind in that freshman year. And as a 10th grade principal, seeing kids come into 10th grade credit deficient, you're already playing that catch-up game. So I think that is an important area because we're able to, it's reactive, but it's a little more proactive in the big picture of student pathways to graduation to one particular group. And I know Marie and I have talked extensively in the past about the developmental algebra class and the number of students who, specifically special education students, that struggle in that class. That's year one of a 2-year Algebra 1 course our students take. It's just the material, they get 2 full credits for it, but the material is broken down and spread out over a 2-year time period. So to better prepare them for not just testing, but future classes and in ways they can apply that information in their lives. So to me, I go to ninth grade quite a bit, but I think that there are a lot of other areas too that we could look at.
Yeah, I won't disagree. Ninth grade is always my focus, being the ninth grade principal, but yeah, I think that's a little concerning. And I think the other concerning spot is our 11th grade, since we are seeing such a large discrepancy there, and maybe putting some more focus there. So both of them, I think either way we go is beneficial. We're either starting them off. I'm a firm believer of getting the kids successful right away so they can stay successful. or it's looking at 11th grade before they're getting to their senior year, making sure that they're passing all their courses. So we're
Do
setting
we
them up
know,
to
and I'm
to
sorry
graduate.
if it's right in front of my face and I don't see it, but the 11th grade, is there a higher percentage of new students in 11th grade maybe than the other grades? Like I'm trying to think, because like there's little anecdotal things about like the classes the kids are taking and whatnot, but to me that doesn't answer it. It's like possible reasons, and I'm wondering if we have a lower percentage or higher percentage of newer students that might attribute to that.
I mean, on the plus side, of, we're looking at some of the higher numbers of here and there, but, like Dr. Stewart, says a lot is we don't want to create our own, we don't want to create our own credit recovery and all of that. And when I was looking back at when we get back to that page, the incoming the new students, with the criteria, right? Is a lot, is quite a bit higher than our returning students with the criteria. So I see that as a plus, right? We always talk about, the longer students stay with us, the more successful they typically are, right? And so that difference between new students at, almost 30%, and then when they're returning with us with one criteria, I mean, that's more than cut in half. So that is definitely a plus to see.
Marie, when you were talking about 11th grade as a possible focus area, can you just dig down a little bit for me? Because I know earlier in the discussion, we were talking about the difference between all students and then just our students with disabilities in 11th grade.
Yeah, I guess
Yes.
just because we were previously talking about it, I think I fully agree that I think 9th grade is a great place to focus. We want to get these kids on the right path right away. I don't disagree with anything Andrea said, but just because 11th grade, we saw such a big discrepancy, I think just within their course performance, it goes from a 57% failed any course to 72.35% with students with disabilities. That's such a large discrepancy between the two. I just think it's something to call out that um yeah, it's just another place of focus. But I think yeah, I'm okay focusing wherever we want to focus. I was just trying to pull out some other areas as well that I guess since we were talking about 11th grade, we want to make sure that those kids are ready to go for graduation. If they're failing, right, they're not earning their credits and now they're behind right before they're going to graduate. So since there was such a large jump.
So I have a thought about, how we would narrow down where our focus would be. I'm thinking, so like, unless a ninth grader starts, when we have our ninth graders start, obviously they're not credit deficient, they're ninth graders. So we have a full team of dedicated credit recovery teachers, and it's very rare a ninth grader ends up there. They end up over there if they start really late, and it's like, they're 7 weeks into the start of the year, and it's kind of unfair almost to put them in a class where they've missed 7 weeks worth of work, right? But generally speaking, ninth graders are in with a smaller number of teachers. Some of them are in the 1 year math tracks, algebra tracks, some are in 2. They aren't all with the same teachers as if they were in a pod. They're still kind of all over the place. We have 6 or 7 physical science teachers and 6 or 7 math, you know what I mean? They're not necessarily in a pod, they're scattered all over. But when it comes to creating a policy and collecting data and seeing how everything is working and putting it into practice, I feel like 11th grade with kids everywhere, all over the place, in credit recovery and CTE, they're all over the place, right? I feel like, although I'm all for focusing there, I'm thinking if we focus with ninth grade, it would just be a clearer path to work with, to really dig into what we've chosen to do. Is it working? And then could apply it to the messier, so to speak, situations once we figure out what works. And I'm thinking of this only from like a logistical side, not like where the needs are, which I don't mean it like that, but like from a logistical side of, if we're trying to create something, if we're trying to really show this working, and it's something that we would want to focus on in a different way and expand it, a place like ninth grade might give us a more ability to streamline things and make more sense of them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I think
Agreement?
so. And I wonder too if that would also help seventh and eighth graders sort of be pulled into the mix, with Sam having, a substantial stakeholder in this project. I think if we focused on ninth grade, it might help her role a little more because you can kind of look at the data for seventh and eighth grade. Just something to think about because I had not thought about that with 11th graders. So that was a great point.
Can we agree then that ninth grade is where the focus would be specifically, well, do we want to take all ninth grade? Are we talking about new students in ninth grade? Well, I guess it depends. I guess they're not necessarily new if they've been with you through the elementary and middle school process, but
I would think it would make sense that we just look at all ninth grade and not separate out the new and the returning, just because even if they've been with OHVA through middle school and they might be used to the platform, we do a lot with our transition. It's a beast to move into the high school where expectations are just naturally different. So I don't see the need to separate them out. In theory, they're all starting fresh in the high school, so we can give them all support.
okay.
Naturally, we will be looking at those other pieces. I mean, I know all of us on this team, but I know Marie and I, when we look at high school data, we get down rabbit holes and we're looking at all these different subcategories and groups. And I think that will happen naturally. And if we need to put efforts more heavily in one area than another to make this impactful, I think we'll be able to see that if we go with the whole ninth grade. I think it'll give us a bigger picture, and it might help us to understand the ninth grade beast overall a little bit better as a team.
Okay. I think that's a great place to start. I think that what becomes of what takes place in ninth grade is obviously the idea would be to replicate that, right, for other grade levels if possible. I don't want to let go of that 11th grade student with disability number because as we've all commented at some point, there's definitely something going on there. And while it doesn't necessarily have to be a focus, I think it's definitely an area of that we pull out and we make sure that we keep an eye on and we monitor and maybe get curious about what's happening there. Because the numbers are something that we definitely don't want to let go of.
I'm already brainstorming. In my head, and I'm telling myself, listen, because my head is spinning with all these different, pieces of data I can look at. I work with the SPED team at the high school from the instructional, like academic side. And so looking at that co-teaching and the inclusion that we're providing and things, I'll get with Christy. That won't be let go. That was a little concerning to me as soon as we saw it.
Absolutely. Okay, great. So I think that our area of focus, ninth grade, so that moves us into, we have, I want to give you a break around 10 o'clock. So that gives us about 9 minutes to talk about what is currently happening when we have students who have course failure. So we want to talk about what's already in place, what works, what doesn't work necessarily, or if we do or do not know that information, but what strategies are currently used to address course failure.
Nicole,
So
if I
if
can
we-
add something real quick here too, and if this
Sure.
maybe doesn't tie in directly, then say so. I guess my other question too is we've been talked about these kind of modified suspensions, for lack of a better word. Should we consider at this time, or maybe table it for later, whether or not those directly correlate to course failure?
So there's only, like last year, I think we had, like, and I'm just talking on the sped side of things. So Andrea, Marie, if there are more on the gen ed side that, because I'm not involved in those, right? So, but on the sped side, I think last year in the high school, we might have had 2 all year on the sped side. So, and this year we've had 1 in the high school and 1 in the middle school. So I don't think it's as, and maybe I'm thinking of it wrong, but it's not a big number that would have that huge impact, at least on the sped side.
No, I appreciate that. That's why I wanted to kind of confirm. I got the impression it wasn't a endemic situation, but I just wanted to make sure you brought it up. So
Yeah, thanks.
thank you.
Adam, yeah.
Carry on. Carry on.
So as far as course failure, in the 9th grade, when we look at math and English specifically, if we get to the end of the semester and a student does not pass their math or English course, they are moved over into our credit recovery program to work on earning back that missed credit. So semester 2, they will be out of the main high school regular course and put into a credit recovery course that is designed to be completed in 8 weeks to earn back that missing half credit. And the hope is that then they could move to the second half of the course and still complete that full credit by the end of the year. So we have a full process where we take those kids who do not pass and we move them over into the credit recovery program for math and English. We don't do that for such as science. So most 9th graders are taking physical science with us. Since they only need 3 credits of science, there's more opportunity to earn back that missed credit. And also students can move into the second semester of physical science and still find success with missing pieces from first semester and not passing. So they might only have to go back and pick up a missing half credit eventually in credit recovery. So we focus in on math and English for that credit recovery piece, especially at the high school level, if they end up failing at the end of the semester.
It's probably not extremely pertinent, but the 11th grade number, something just dawned on me. So if we have kids that routinely end up in credit recovery and aren't making progress through credit recovery, their 11th grade year tends to be the backlog. That's where they're taking like English 9, English 10, and a couple of different math classes, because if they're in credit recovery and aren't being successful in credit recovery, 11th grade is where the backlog happens.
I'm trying to wrap my brain around that.
So April, I was gonna just piggyback off what April had shared, and I was thinking too from the CTE side. One of our CTE counselors, Trisha Bard, runs the Rise Up credential, like earning obviously points for his graduation, and so that seems to be a very popular way for students to regain credit in a way. And we do have a number of what would be considered upperclassmen in that avenue.
So, it would be interesting, I think, to look at those 11th graders, April, who are in that kind of backlog of students who are trying to recover some of those courses that they didn't pass as 9th or 10th graders. How many of them would have been flagged as a 9th grader? And then as you begin to look at some prevention interventions so that they don't get to 11th grade and be behind, maybe we can apply those in this 9th grade plan that you're talking about. I don't know if there's a way to kind of.
Just to add to that, and I don't know,
Mhm.
April, if you are how aware you are of this, but we do, especially with math and English, but we because we don't if kids need to go into credit recovery because they failed this first semester, that's a great opportunity. However, we want to prevent that, right? We don't want them to become credit deficient. And so we have, once the kids get moving, we see how they're doing in their courses and things. We do have some I support teachers who work with those teaching teams. They identify those students that are at risk of failing. They also identify the special education students who are at risk of failing, because we don't want a kid who's in algebra, who struggled in algebra the whole first semester, and then put them in a condensed version of what they didn't do well in. So we try to prevent and try to help them stay where they are, especially if they were a student that was, working and struggling, then looking at, they are working really hard, they're still struggling with this. Is there a bigger issue here too, to try to identify some of those things so they don't end up in credit recovery and then maybe not pass the class there, and then it becomes a cycle. So, and that's where you get your backlog that April was talking about. So it can start building up as early as 9th grade. So if we can keep them in the main high school, they're going to get the instruction at that, quote unquote, like normal pace.
Right. And so that credit recovery is a reactive measure, right? Based on how they performed in that course. Do we know what's causing the failure to begin with? Like what's happening in class where students aren't meeting expectations?
So that is something, at least I also oversee. So I oversee 9th grade. I also oversee the math department. So when the math department is sending me their failing spreadsheets, that I ask them for some data as of what's going on, especially with the kids that are close to the passing mark, but they don't make it. And so I would say there's a very high correlation between student attendance and the student failure rate, because most of the students who are failing are the ones that are hard to reach. They're not coming to the live sessions. They're not coming to the help sessions. They have a lot of missing assignments. So a lot of times the kids that are not finding success, it usually boils down to the engagement piece with the student and the student not engaging within the course material. There are a few situations where maybe the student is just greatly struggling with the math. But even with that, it usually boils back to engagement because of what Andrea talked about before we have our ICE, we call them ICE support teachers, but we have 4 of them in the math department. They are really focused in on that tutoring or that individual help with students. And then our teachers as well as our SPED co-teachers. There's a lot of assistance and help that we have built into the courses to help those kids with their understanding of the material if they engage with us. But I would say there's a very high correlation between their attendance and engagement and their passing and failing rate.
Other thoughts about that, or the ELA side, other things that we might be seeing that are possible reasons why we have the course failures outside of attendance or engagement?
One
I
of the
think-
reasons we see a lot of failure in English is that students, and I know this isn't new to anyone, but students don't want to write. You have to do some writing. So that English teachers will tell you, when it comes to when students do submit the work regularly or semi-regularly, and even if they are attending class on some level, if they not doing the writing is a big, big piece of why students are not doing well in the course. Engaging kids in the writing is a huge priority of the department and of the English team. We also, at that level for the special ed students, we do have more inclusion support. We really ramp that up in both 9th and 10th grade English, because our English test scores for English 10 tests are lower than we are happy with. So trying to provide some more support in that area has been important to us. But a lot of it is the writing. And then of course, what Murray said, when kids are struggling, even when we hear from parents, my kid is struggling, the vast majority of the time, there is attendance in live sessions issue.
Okay. All right, perfect. So we've talked about a little bit of the why, right? Why we are seeing some of this. We've talked about moving kids from their regular course into credit recovery as a measure if they're failing. So I think what we're gonna do, I think it's a natural place to take a break. We're going to take a 10-minute break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what's next. What action can we take based on this conversation in a preventative, whether it's something that we can grab a hold of, a low-hanging fruit that we can take action on and get some action steps written down before we move on. Okay. We will come back at in 10 minutes, so 10:13. Okay, welcome back. Hope you had a chance to get up and move for a minute and do what you needed to do. We are gonna kind of regroup, summarize this portion of the agenda so we can move into completing that rubric that we need to accomplish. So some things that so just thinking about and reflecting on the conversation that we've had so far. We've talked about our focus being with ninth grade. We've talked about what happens once a student fails. And so when I framed that question earlier, my question was, what happens when a student fails ELA or math, right? And we have a response to that. So I'd like to reframe the question in thinking about what's happening before the end of the semester when we see that a student may be at risk of failing the class, and thinking about the response to that and asking, do we have that information here based on the data that we have in front of us to be able to answer that question? If we don't, that's great, and we're assuming that we probably don't. So can we come up with a few action items or a few things to list out of what we would need to know to be able to answer that question? And so again, what's happening before the end of the semester if a student looks like they're at risk of failing? Because remember, we want to put interventions in place to prevent the failure versus reacting to the failure. So anybody have thoughts on that?
So from our teacher point of view or side, we do expect them to be making personal connections with the students, whether that's by phone calls or text messages. So they are reaching out to those kids that are failing their course. That is usually their largest priority or the part that takes up most of their time. Or they're also just reaching out to all students who maybe missed the unit test that was assigned and they have not completed that yet. So even if they're not necessarily failing the course, they have a large point assignment that they're missing, which could end up resulting, if it continues, right, in them failing the course. So they're trying to intervene with that from the teacher perspective. We have on our side, it's called Total View, but it's a way where our teachers are able to go in and place notes for the kids that they did attempt or make an attempt to call home or to connect with that student regarding whatever they're trying to connect with them about. So we have that. It's not, we're not able to pull the data from their like, this student has XYZ notes. We'd have to go into each individual student or teacher's notes to see what notes they've entered. But that is part of our, from the principal side, it's part of our evaluation piece that we are consistently reviewing those total view notes, that they are updated, that they are reaching out to the appropriate students and making those appropriate notes throughout the semester.
I have a question for that, and again, I apologize if this is an ignorant question, but I'm just seeking clarification for my own knowledge here, and then also to maybe kind of guide this discussion a little bit more. You mentioned that if a student doesn't take the test or they miss a big assignment, that triggers the teacher then reaching out to the student. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
And is that and again, I'm just asking for my own knowledge and maybe for the good of the group here, is that a OHVA policy that's a trigger to initiate contact across all the grade levels for all the students? Or is that just an experience with the teachers that you particularly work with, that some of them do it, that all of them do it? So I guess I'm asking, is that like an individualized practice or is that a systemic expectation of OHVA?
Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's more just an overall general expectation for teachers. We don't have it explicitly like as an expectation in one of our teacher expectation documents that if a student misses a test, they must follow up with an email. We don't have anything along those lines, but I think overall consensus All of our teachers are just naturally doing it because those are the kids not finding success. And so that's their easiest path forward with who am I going to call, who am I going to connect with, to try to get them to get engaged and come back in the course. Some expectations that we do have though at OHVA is that we do expect that zeros are entered on assignments on a weekly basis. So all teachers are expected to either on a Friday or a Monday get in, enter in all the zeros for the prior week's assignments so that it triggers the drop in the student's grade, right? And so the students get an accurate view of their grade. Our system is also set up that we do have due dates on our assignments. That's another expectation across the board where teachers are expected to have their class plan updated with their due dates. So automatically in the system, if the student doesn't take their Unit 1 test, it will populate on an overdue notice tab for the student so that they are aware that they are missing an assignment that is overdue. So there's some pieces that are full, like school-wide expectations. You got to have your zeros entered. You have to use your class plan. But as far as that personal communication with reaching out to letting them know that they're missing a test, we don't have that explicitly stated, but at least within all my teachers that I'm reviewing, it's happening on a very regular basis. And that's usually when you get into a teacher's notes, you can see they've reached out for the missing Unit 1 test, and then they reached out for the missing Unit 2 test. So you see it naturally happening, I think, just because it's a natural way to reach out and connect to the LC or to the learning coach and the student about how to bring up their grade.
Yeah, and I think that's wonderful. And I love hearing the fact that you're so, it's not shocking to me, quite frankly, that you are so on top of that. I'm curious because when I asked a question earlier about do those suspensions even, impact, is that, I guess, is that like a early warning that, hey, a student may fail a class? And the fact that there's so few students that get those suspension rates, again, I agree that it's probably not, I would say it's not worth measuring, but maybe that's something where it's like, well, maybe that's not going to be a focus point. But I'm curious, and if perhaps an OHVA specific early warning indicator that we may want to start looking at systemically is they missed a test or they got a zero, and potentially if that would be looking at your data, because you have such an amazing array of data and you do such an excellent job on collecting and correlating your data. It's like in another world, I'd love for HVA to like present to everyone, like, look, here's how you can get this done. But I understand that you have some unique advantages in that regard. Regardless, I'm curious, and if maybe we would want to look at a zero on a test or a zero on what would be a major assignment as a potential trigger point for early intervention or an early warning indicator. Hey, this student may be on track to start failing now. Do we need to provide some sort of systemic intervention? And I don't know what that would look like. And I'm going to volley back to Nicole and Chelsea in the group. But given that the unique composition of the student population and the methodology of instruction that is very unique to HVA, outsider looking in, that may be a flag point that maybe systemically we want to look at that as a early warning indicator. But I'll leave that to the group. I appreciate you letting me ramble for a minute.
On to the next step is good.
Yeah, so go ahead, Katie.
I'm just going to share out that in the CTE program, we do have what we call an academic concern tracker that our school counselors implemented last school year. And it was just a way because we have 2 designated career counselors for our pathway program. So to kind of give you the background, we have about 405 students this school year, and we divide that between the 2 counselors. One gets A through L last names, and the other one gets M through Z. And it's just a way for our faculty members to just log in and create an alert that just discusses what was the challenge, issues, behaviors, and then our I guess typically our principal would follow up, but at the moment, we're doing our career counselors would follow up, and then as well as our teachers, we do have kind of the next step. And of course, then our director as well as some of the other coordinators might be notified for intervention supports. But it's just really an Excel spreadsheet that we created that we all have access to.
Are you finding success with that, Katie, at this point?
We have been, we right now, I mean, we don't have a large number of students that have been entered. And we do periodically remind our faculty, of course, being in the semester, midway through the semester, at different points, just to remind them that we do have this tool available. Anytime if I might hear at the water cooler, quote unquote, of, hey, I have a student, I might nudge that, faculty member to, hey, why don't you go ahead and put that in the concern tracker? So it's our second year starting it. Nothing fancy, but it's been a safety net, so to say.
Great communication tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be fancy, right? It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be, in fact, sometimes the less fancy it is, the easier it is to access for everyone and to act on it. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet.
It's a good communication piece, right? Yeah. So I think that brings us full circle then back to, for the question for the group is between where do you feel a good action step would land for this team between now and the next time we come back together as it relates to course failures, specifically for our 9th graders? Something that's manageable for this team in the amount of time that we have. It could be something else that we just need to know, right? Like it just might need to be, is there additional data we need to bring to the table? When I say action step, I'm not talking about implementing something completely different, just what that might look like for you all.
To be able to move forward.
Yep, just to move it forward.
You heard my vote, but I'm only one person. What does everyone else think?
I guess I'm just trying to think of the best way to go about this. One thing I guess that it would be interesting to know is which English, it should be English 9 that they are currently not passing. That one's easy. Math will need to dig into whether it is our developmental algebra, which is our 2-year algebra 1 split, or if it is algebra 1. Where I guess where the percents are there, my guess is that most of them are in developmental algebra because our algebra 1 passing rate is typically high. So I would guess that that's probably where most of those failures are. Yeah,
I think you're on the right path, Marie.
I think too, I see April's comment in the chat there. I wonder if you're able to take that data and do some correlation between those failures in developmental algebra and English 9 and attendance. Like, should we dig down there a little more too?
yes, I agree. That's where that was my next, it finally came. But I agree that looking at the attendance piece with it, and then probably also matching up the teachers within developmental algebra. I know Andrea said we've talked about that extensively a lot. Just with the teachers and who has the SPED kids who kind of really digging down to identify who some of these kids are, what math class, what their attendance looks like, and see if we can see any trends where we can make an impact.
Yeah.
It is.
Go ahead, Nicole.
No, go ahead, Erin. I was just going to say, I think that that's a really good next step. I think that'll give us some more information the next time we come together to move forward.
and piggybacking off of that too, and I want to reiterate, it's okay not to know, right? You're a huge organization. You have a very large number of students, and we know that there are students who aren't passing. So I think the questions, Marie, that you're asking and things like that we're all looking at right now, it's okay to still be in this exploration phase, right? You have a ton of data. You have very motivated staff. You're doing really good work. And I would just encourage you to keep in mind that not knowing is completely not completely acceptable. It's to be expected at this point, right? I mean, we're digging into this together for the first time. So just don't feel for a moment at any time that not knowing is indicative of any weakness of the system. It's not. That's the purpose of this project. Is we're going to dig in, we're going to get deep, we're going to ask questions, and we're going to, explore different rabbit holes, for lack of a better word, to kind of get in there and see what's going on so that we can find out what points to leverage to improve outcomes here. So I really appreciate you going down that path a lot. Thank you. That's important. That's what the name of the game is right now.
Perfect. So we have our action steps to move forward as it relates to course failure and continuing the attendance piece as well. And then we'll get the behavior numbers that we need just separately to input in for the project itself. Any questions, any last thoughts on any of the conversation that we've had this morning around the data and where we are headed? Okay, we are going to move into the rubric. So you all have the full rubric. The link was in the agenda, or the attachment was in the agenda. And then Becca, did we find that, or okay. If you don't mind sharing that on the screen, we will pull that up. I'm just going to read the expectation and then give you a moment to look at the I think we'll look down the center in the in progress first column to see if we're falling in that in progress category, or if we need to move down or move up depending on what the expectations are from the rubric. There are a few things in the rubric that I will point out as we go through that are what Amy called must-haves by the end of year one. And so we'll call those out, and just so everybody is aware, those will be our areas that we'll want to make sure that we're building and focusing on. And then there are others that will come as the work progresses. So we are reporting on quarter one. Yep, and we're just going to start with 1A. Completed by name of person who completed the form. Okay, so yeah, any comments that we have around this, we'll just take brief notes and put them in there. I think under quarter one, that please select, yep, so that's gonna, if it needs improvement, if it's in progress, or if it's quality, and there is nothing wrong with us being in the needs improvement category for some of these or many of them. As you guys know, we're just getting started here. So we're going to look at 1A, school district, each child on track team meeting participants. So participants of this team include district leadership team and any other personnel needed to ensure representation as indicated in the agreement that we had. So down the center there, take a second and read the in progress category.
So is this just meaning that, like, if we say quality, because that's my first thought, right, is quality, right? Meaning that we have, like, I'm thinking we have a wide range of participants from SPED, from general education, principals. We have data, awesome data people here, and some people who couldn't make it that represent maybe PBIS and school count, that aren't at this meeting. So I think right now we have an awesome team of participants.
Yeah, Christy, I would agree. I think that this was one of the very first things that we tackled, right? When once you guys agreed to participate in this, we made sure that we had the right people. So
Yeah.
I think quality would be fine.
Am I just putting my initials or
Or first name. Does it fit?
okay,
Yeah.
there we go.
Oh, there's more room. Okay. Yep. And so we said there in that first one that we were going to be quality under quarter one, Becca, for 1A. Oh, it's not on, it doesn't show up on my screen. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Perfect. Sorry about that. 1B school district, each child. So this team, we have a schedule. Meetings take place during the district leadership team meetings. The meetings have been scheduled using the calendar and the data entry form. Again, if you guys don't mind, I'm just going to lead us kind of through so we can move through some of these. So yep, for quality, do you all agree that we have meetings that occur at the beginning for the 2030 day, at the end of each grading period? Those are scheduled, and the school year based on the calendar. Everybody's good with that, with quality there?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. 1C school district, we have communication protocols. So let's see here. Each child on track information is included in the district leadership team, the building leadership team, and teacher-based teams, and any other specialized teamed meetings. Down the center, this includes providing what's happening in these meetings during BLT and TBT, and include those bullet points there. Is this information communicated outside of this team, or has it been yet? I know this is only meeting 2.
So it has been communicated to the other high school principals. That's all the further it's made it from my view.
Okay.
And so Becca and I was just talking with Becca about this too yesterday. We're planning on our admin team. Many of the people who are here meet virtually on Wednesdays. So I think it's in early January when we come back from winter break. Becca and I will be presenting this to the entire admin team, including, Dr. Stewart, Kyle, Donna, everybody. So we plan on doing that as well. And that includes even like kindergarten on up, even though they're not directly involved, just so they're in the loop.
Perfect. So I feel like that's probably an in progress. And so the ones that we just went through, 1A through C, this is a must-have by the end of this year, and you guys are well on your way with making that happen. So number 2, the EWIMS. So the tool includes indicators for attendance, course performance, behavior, clearly established thresholds. The tool is populated with data for the entire school year for grades 9-12.
I would say this one is in progress, right? This would be all the spreadsheets and the data that we're pulling together, but we just don't have it for the full school year yet. We're still working on adding in the data.
Absolutely. You guys do an excellent job with your data.
There's a whole long list for that too, so we can continue to focus on those different areas.
3A is your one plan. References the use of early warning data to identify students at risk for dropping out in grades 6-8 and at risk for not qualifying for high school diploma in grades 9-12. Items in the in progress category are under development. So thinking about your one plan, and again, I'm not sure familiarity that all of you have with that. So I don't know if Shayna is still here with us, but in your one plan of those things, what are we referencing? There's a lot there. She's not on. So your one plan references the use of early warning data to identify students at risk for dropping out in grades 6, 8 and high school 9, 12. Do we know for certain? I would have to pull it up and have it in front of me. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with what's actually in there as it relates to these pieces.
Yeah, I would say that's, I guess, in progress since we need to really dig into that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you do have a comprehensive
Oh, yeah,
plan.
yeah, we need Shayna here to kind of guide us through that a little bit. Kind of the
Well,
same thing with the one needs assessment, right? That kind of.
yeah, for the next one, I think if we mark both of those, as in progress, one, because you do have a one needs assessment and it is comprehensive. There may be things that we need to go in and take a look at as it relates to this work, but for the time being.
When we just
And
got our special ed profile rating, is that what it's referring to too? With that, when it says use of special education profile data?
yes,
Okay, yeah, and
Yeah.
so we just got that the other day and we meet requirements, so.
oh, congratulations.
Always a good thing.
I don't have it in front of me, but this isn't a year one. It's not a year one must have too also. So, so if we want to mark 3B, C, and D as in progress, I think we can do that. For career advising policy includes all the components required by law, research-based indicators of attendance, course performance, behavior within the early warning systems tool to identify students at risk of dropping out 6-12 and places them on a student success plan. So your career advising policy there in the center, take a look at that.
And remember the career advising policy has to have those 8 components and things like that. So they're all kind of listed down here.
So this is where it'd be wonderful to have Megan here. She really oversees all of this, but I believe we do have our full career advising policy in place. It's board approved, as far as I'm aware. So I would tend to believe the quality as well, but I just don't know all the full details of all that. Megan would have all that information.
Are we okay with putting it in progress for quarter one and then getting that information? Is everybody?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure she has that,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yep, that's fine.
That way we can just speak to it, right? Student success plans. So same thing here. They've been developed using the Department of Ed's career advising toolkit and completed for all grades 6-12 who've been identified as at risk for dropping out. Again, we have several steps there in the in progress.
So yeah, does OHVA have a student success plan policy for when students are identified as at risk of dropping out? And I'll tell you right now, in full disclosure, if you don't, that does not make you unique from many other districts either. So just being transparent, friends. We're all friends here. I'm just keeping it real. So if you don't have one, don't feel like you're going to get busted on something. This is a weaker area, a soft spot for a lot of our districts.
So this would be Megan's expertise, who is not here. She oversees our counseling department, but I will say I do see in students' total view notes that if they are at risk for not graduation, I see notes from the school counselor in there. So I believe we have some sort of process with this, but the exact details of it and if it is for all that full grade band. I know it happens at the high school level. I just don't know enough information on it.
Yeah, and Sam would be able to speak better to middle school, but I do think there is, I would be comfortable with in progress because there is some sort of process, how like uniform it is, or you know what I mean? We would need those ladies here, but I would be comfortable with in progress there.
Okay. Takes us to 5 for graduation policy, includes criteria and procedures to identify students in grades 9-12 who are at risk for not qualifying for a diploma. Also includes a process to notify the parent, guardian, or caregiver that the student is at risk, and process to develop support a student success plan. Are we in the same situation here with that one?
Again, I think this one it is happening. There are total view notes. We have specific letters that go home to parents when students fail class and that they become at risk for graduation. If they're going into our credit recovery program, they receive a lot of information. I think somebody else was going to state something, so I'll let them also add in, but I would feel comfortable with the in progress here too.
Yeah, we do actually have really structured policies for this. And as Marie mentioned too, a student, whether they go, even a first-time credit recovery student, there's a whole process that the counselors follow with, providing the students with a live session of what credit recovery is, why they're in it, their goal with it, how they need to finish in a certain time frame. Families are reached out to. We identify those students right away because the counselors are looking at their schedules and looking at their progress and scheduling them appropriately, and they're kind of flagged that way. In progress is fine with me if we just want to get more information and be able to show, this is our process. But I do know that one, we really do have something solid in place. I just can't provide you every detail. Again, poor Megan. Everyone's talking about her and she's not here, but if we could have her for that one too.
It shows how important she is. You can all let her know that she was very, very missed. That's
I'll
all.
tell her she's got job security because we need her for a lot of stuff.
There you go. Exactly.
Okay. Again, graduation plan. So a graduation plan is completed and updated annually for all students in 9-12. Plan is based on the DEW template for students with disabilities. This plan is aligned to part 5 of the IEP for students at risk of not qualifying for a diploma. Can we speak to graduation plans?
So this would be another one I think we can put as in progress. We do have graduation plans for all of our students inside Power School that our school counseling team oversees and updates on a regular basis. But again, Megan with her job security, she would be able to give us all the details with it, but that is a piece and part of our process.
Now, could we put that as quality, since we know there's a specific process through Power School and it's addressed on a regular basis? Because April, wasn't that a whole big thing with our stride audit and addressing that also through the IEP?
Part of the graduation plan process would be that, the students and the families are met with annually to review that and update it, things like that.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then I think that may be appropriate, but I would also say it's okay to be in progress now so that we can show improvement and growth as we go as well, if there's any question. But again, it's totally to your level of comfort as well as applicability, I guess, if they're being met with every year and things like that. And if you're meeting all those criteria, then yeah, quality would be appropriate.
I can say that they are meeting twice a year if appropriate for the student, as far as like what I mentioned with that credit recovery when they're behind, because the counselors, those kids are shifting, right? Hopefully some of them are moving out of credit recovery. Some unfortunately are moving into it. And so they do that. I do know that I've seen in notes how they have, Marie, correct me if I'm wrong, like the quarterly counselor conferences, or semester conferences. So I know that they do have a plan for that. Again, I'm fine with it in progress, but I know that it exists. I'm positive of that.
Yeah.
So I can speak to that too.
I'm fine, if we want to stick with in progress so we can get more specific details down the line, I'm good with that. But yeah, it's nice to know we do have a wonderful process.
Yeah, I think I think we can leave it as in progress is fine. I think that you are definitely right there with the quality for the next time around. We just need the details. Business Advisory Council meets at least quarterly, includes representatives from special ed. Meeting with minutes are shared in the district leadership team. There was conversation about this, I think, at the last regional meeting.
Yeah, so according to our school's designation, we do not have a business advisory council.
It's not a requirement, correct?
Pardon?
Were you saying it's not a requirement?
Right, because we are a charter school.
Okay. Let's make note of that in the box. And then we'll leave it as needs improvement, but we know that it's, yeah, thank you. Business advisory plan. Same situation here.
Correct.
Number 7, student attendance policy includes at least one targeted and intensive research-based intervention that is also included in the student support and intervention inventory.
So we do have a full student attendance policy that is board approved and inside our student handbook that we following the state guidelines with the different rules and regulations around truancy and things like that. Is that what you're after here?
I believe for the in progress, yeah. Yes, that would place you in the in progress category, and then those additional pieces at the bottom for the quality would be the evidence to move forward, which is, yep, that's what we're working toward. Number 8 is serving students with disabilities and career tech pathways.
In
Go
progress.
ahead.
I was gonna say
In
this.
progress.
Yep, in progress. Thanks, Christy.
Do we have, are there any notes that we need to document around that conversation, or everybody's good?
So we put a lot of things in place from the special ed instructional side in the last year and a half, 2 years, and having some intervention, targeted towards that particular group. Just out of curiosity, what was the indicator that we were looking at to qualify it as in progress or quality? Just so I know what I'm working towards.
We're on number.
Are you're
I'm sorry.
to in the career tech pathway, Andrea?
I'm sorry, I kind of cut out there for a minute. My audio did.
That's okay. Are you referring to step 6.8?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Yes. And so we looked at our overall graduation rates in our pathways with students with disabilities. So we broke it down by pathways and looked at those numbers compared to students who were not identified as students with disabilities. So from there, we developed points of actions of how are we marketing our programs, how are we providing wraparound support services with our students. We've been meeting with Lisa Height on a regular basis to go over these specifics within, I guess, this specific point of serving students with disabilities and CTE.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
So I see that they're asking us here on your form, Becca, if we have those numbers for number of students who have student success plans. Again, if we don't currently, we can put NA, but I think that's a good note that next time maybe if we can get that information, we can give them the data. Unless somebody knows that off the cuff.
Or we can get it before she submits it.
Yeah, or that's a good point. Chelsea said we could get it before you submit it. I don't know if it'll let you go to the next without answering that.
She can go back and fill it in.
Yep. Okay, so it lets us move on. Number 9. Number 9 is listed as a must-have for year 1. This is the student support and intervention inventory. To include at least one universal targeted and intensive intervention for each of those 3 areas. But to be in progress, there's no evidence that all of these interventions are research-based, aligned, delivered to be trained, so on and so forth. Or if we do not have that yet, that would be the needs improvement. So I think that's something that we're working on creating. If everybody's okay
I
with that.
agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I just want to make sure you didn't already have something that we weren't aware of. Number 10 is the school climate. This also is must-have year 1. Student engagement, school climate survey has been completed 1 time during the school year by students, school personnel, and families. That would probably be a needs.
I don't think they've done
Now, team, doesn't Stride send that out, or am I thinking of something different? Those get sent out at least once or twice a year, or am I thinking
Yeah.
of something different?
No, you're right. They are sent out. There's for teachers as well as for families. I see on the rubric though, it mentions, that it's delivered, like the results, like the overall results are shared with families. Is that correct? I don't believe we do that we share like the results as a whole with, or am I reading that wrong?
So I think for that, then if we have can we say it's in progress, right? Because we do have the surveys and various ones. It's just, we need to work on some parts of that, right?
Yep, I think so. Becca, would you mind putting that in the notes just so we have that in the comments, that the portion of it that you have, but the other portion that we need to work on? As she's finishing that one up, we have math supports are next on number 11. 7th, 8th, and high school math teachers meet to discuss direction of the math program and strategies to close high school student learning gaps in math based on Algebra 1, formative assessment, and end of course data. You can take a look there in the center column.
So I think in this one, we can definitely mark in progress. I mean, this is just all of our things going on in the math classroom, correct? And our teachers are meeting on a regular basis in TBTs to discuss their math supports and what more they can do to help support our students to success. So
Okay.
I guess,
Perfect.
are you looking for specific data to prove that we're doing these things to move up into the quality, just so I know, I guess, for my purpose?
Yeah, I think for this one, it looks like they're talking about just consistency, right? Like sometimes collected, sometimes discussed. Just making sure, like, are they looking at formative assessment practices? Student data is sometimes collected and used versus often. Yeah. If asked, would you have evidence of teachers using student data or formative assessment practices?
Yes, so this is where I think we would lean in on our TBT forms because that's where it's all documented. And that is already happening on a regular basis where we're looking at that formative data and then they are discussing it and determining what action steps they're going to take from there. Also ensuring that our assessments are applicable and yeah. So I guess this
Okay.
one, if it's just that we would have it if needed, I think we could put quality because I believe this is all happening on a regular basis. And we have it all documented within our TBTs as well as our curriculum maps and things along those lines where we're constantly looking at this.
I agree with Marie too, and even some of the instructional pieces, instructional practices that are noted in the quality section. I see those going on in the math classrooms when I'm looking at the, co-teaching setting and things very consistently. I've seen it in the TBT meetings as well, that constant discussion of data and then using that data to drive instructional decisions, that communication, that it mentions even with support staff and intervention specialists and things like that. I'm seeing all of that across the board.
Okay, can I push back just a little bit?
Absolutely.
Okay. I think that I think you're right on target with these things are happening. My question and follow-up would be, are these things being successful in the classroom while they're happening, or is there a success rate based on those things happening? And I say that just because of the data that we looked at with the course information today. Is there work that can still be done in the in progress to the quality piece to shore some of that up?
To prevent 23% failure rate for your students with disabilities. So would that, just the data that we looked at today, would that really put you in progress? I guess I would view quality as a decrease in those failure rates.
Oh,
So we're
I see what you're saying, like looking at it as a big picture, even over time. Yes, I agree that in progress makes sense in that sense. I think that, because these are, we're talking about instructional practices, I think if you were able to look at the data and of the kids who come consistently, I think that you would, again, this is in progress because I'm saying this is what I think you'd see, but I'm confident that you would see that the kids who are coming, you'd be able to prove that those things were working. But that takes time to really look into and really truly dig into to get the, quality data for.
Perfect, thank you. Yep. Last two, 12A, adolescent literacy supports. Implementation of the local literacy plan, which may include a reading achievement plan or a reading improvement plan. If you have a reading improvement plan that addresses high school and is aligned to Ohio's plan to raise literacy achievement. Is there a local literacy plan? Yep.
I don't believe that we have anything that is like comprehensive and written and in any sort of a handbook or where there is like a formal plan put in place for a student that is struggling. Marie, are you aware of anything? I know neither of us oversee English specifically, but I feel like this is something that we would all be aware of.
I know you have a reading achievement plan. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's for elementary. It was a requirement last year and again this year for your district. But as far as reaching adolescent literacy, you might be on point there, Andrea.
Now,
Yeah.
in the middle school, at least, would, and I could be totally off here, the science of reading, would that, I mean, I obviously I think we might be in the end, but the science of reading as that's moving up into the grade levels, it's not like a plan that we have, I don't think, written out as like a policy. But we are, following the state's initiative, Science of Reading.
Sure. Yeah, and I think maybe that would lead to a local literacy plan once all of that, and you may have already reached all of the end of that training, but it sounds like that might be a not in progress or a needs improvement at this point.
Okay, yep.
Specific, yeah, it's specific to adolescent literacy and having a local plan. And then the last, adolescent literacy supports. So intervention period, in addition to core in ELA provided by a trained professional, student interventions focus on specific literacy skills, are data-based, and include high-quality instructional materials.
So Andrea, that would be our support, right? And our intervention specialists?
Yes, I think so. I'm just looking at the rubric just to make sure that I'm really seeing it align.
When the rubric is stating that they are scheduled into separate intervention courses, is that meaning that they're taking like ELA 9 as well as another course? Is that what it's indicating? If that is the case, we don't have that. Well, I say that, but then I support does have their own course.
But I don't think that
but I
I
don't-
support is consistent because they address more like testing. So preparing for the December end of course retakes, they're pulling in just the kids who need to retake that test to earn a higher score towards competency. There could be kids who aren't invited, who technically maybe did okay or aren't taking the test yet, or something like that, like ninth graders who aren't supposed to be taking that test yet, they wouldn't be included in that. I know like middle of the year, they focus on ACT prep for 11th graders. So I don't know that that would be consistent enough to say that, or it could be like a start for like a early start for the in progress. And we would have to look at really, really adjusting that.
Yeah, if it's a true course, then I would say this one is in needs progress. Because we don't have anything specific that students are taking as well as their ELA course.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
We'll just make note of that. You have a base, right? You have something to build from, so.
May I ask a question about that particular indicator? For it being a course, like kind of defining what that would need to be so we know what we're working towards. We have a really hard time, especially these, 15-year-olds I always say would rather play Xbox than log into their algebra class. So, we have a lot of kids that it's hard to get them to their classes in the first place. Could this be something like asynchronous that's monitored by a teacher, that kids are still being like provided feedback or something, or is it required that it would be live with live instruction as an additional course for the students? Are there any specific requirements to say you're doing this right?
So I think the word course in this column is being used interchangeably with the word period as well, or
intervention.
yeah, just an intervention. So it's a time when students have intentional intervention in addition to their core ELA class. So they're missing skills, they need some extra support on something specific outside of that ELA class. Is their time when they are scheduled, it's intentional to get some explicit intervention.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
And everybody's still good with the in progress based on that description, right? Or N.
Nicole, I was gonna ask, can we go back to the number 8 for CTE, serving students with disabilities?
Sure.
Thank you.
Are we good with 12 then? Everybody's, okay. Let's look at 8.
Would you like us to put in, you know, which part of the rubric within step or point 8 that we're working on? Or you're okay with leaving that blank?
No.
Yeah, I think the more information we can put in here and the more notes we can capture about where you are and where we need to go, absolutely.
Yeah, certainly. So we have completed the career technical pathway student recruitment process. Or just the CTE pathway recruitment process. And so we've identified how we market to our students, and we've identified barriers and gaps in our recruitment processes.
Good.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yep. Thanks, Katie. Yep, I would, Becca, if you just want to hold off on submission just for until we're finished here, and we can talk real quick after the meeting if you don't mind about that. But you guys, thank you so much. You guys, you've worked very hard today in the last 2 hours that we've spent together. If we go back to the agenda quickly, I think we have our next steps. I think we know where we're going for the next meeting. Does anybody have any questions? Anything that needs to be communicated, that's where we're at on our agenda. So who needs to receive the information about what we talked about today? And how can we communicate that information to the appropriate people? So based on what we discussed, what does that communication look like for you all?
From the high school standpoint, we're going to be looking at taking a look at that engagement TBT, where we're going to be focusing in on that. So we're going to need to communicate overview of what we discussed today and kind of the direction that we're going with the 11th and 12th grade principals, as well as our assistant principals, so that they are aware, and they will probably help us with creating some of these documents just to make sure that we're not missing anything. So we'll have them reviewing and helping with that piece. So there will still be ongoing communication, looping in the other high school administrators.
And with that, you know, like, as we were going through the rating kind of thing, it seems like obviously, we need to get with maybe, Megan, she was popular through that, and Sam, and kind of check on those pieces that we were unsure about, whether it be, you know, we rated in an N or in progress, just to see where we're at with some of those pieces, and what we need to do from there.
Perfect. Anything else that you guys feel like you need to communicate? Any other questions, support? I was just trying to find our next, does anybody have, do you have the next meeting date? Off the tips of your fingers. I don't think we are meeting again until January. I will,
January 23rd.
okay, perfect. Thank you. January 23rd. We will meet again. I will say Marie and Andrea specifically, Katie, I know you're working pretty closely with Lisa Height, but if you need anything from myself or Chelsea as you are working through what this looks like for your teacher-based teams, or course failure for, you know, questions to start thinking about for the math and ELA course failures, please don't hesitate to reach out. Excuse me, to one of us so that we can help in any way that we can support that work.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
And is our next meeting, Nicole, I'm sorry, 9 to 11, 9 to noon? What's our time frame on that next one?
I have 9 to noon listed on January 23rd.
Thank you.
Hey guys, I hope that you all have, is there anything else? Anybody need anything before we go? Thank you for all of the work that you did today. I look forward to following up with you and seeing you in January. Hope you all have a good holiday. And we will meet again soon.
All right, thanks, you too, Nicole. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone. Hey, Becca, I just wanted to make sure how you felt about the rubric, and do we need to put those numbers in? Do you want to just put NA at this point and go ahead and submit?
Oh yeah, I don't have those numbers.
Okay.
If they need them, Becca, I'm sure that Amy will reach out to us and we can add them later if Amy needs them.
Okay.
But at this point, we can at least get it submitted so they know that we've done the work.
Okay, so I stopped sharing my screen. You want me to submit?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
The other thing that we have to turn in, I got an email saying that we haven't done yet, is the data collection form. Early warning indicator data collection form.
And that has another email on it again, Becca, so we thought it would be best if it came from you and not us.
Okay.
It's on the Padlet.
It's marked as updated 10/10/24.
This is under data collection form.
It is.
Early warning indicator data collection form.
Yep.
Okay, let me share my screen.
I didn't think they needed to sit through us just putting numbers in a
we're just putting
document.
numbers in.
I'm sure they appreciate that. Cohort one's turning.
So yeah, you want us just to read these
Yeah.
numbers to you?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Total number of students in grade 9, 1,730.
Wait,
Grade 10 is 1891. 11 is 1594. And 12 is 1401. I don't know if you guys use blocks. I would assume not, but I don't know.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Off track Q1 attendance. This is by grade attendance, 290, 343, 253, and 247. Behavior numbers.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I know
There was 0 in 9th and 10th grade. According to the chat box.
Yeah. Christy said she sat through a manifestation determination where a student got suspended for 5 days this year. And I think that was the only one she'd seen happen in years.
Yeah, that's I would imagine that takes a lot.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I don't know how else to say it. So
I don't know what grade that was, like 11th or 12th grade.
I don't think it was a 12th grader.
And so I'm wondering then about, I don't know. Can we come back to, can we skip to course performance just because I'm not sure we have that, we don't have that information at this point. Course performance, 9th grade, failed any course, 842. 1004 for 10th grade. 911. 724. Is failed.
So all students math.
Oh, okay, thank you. All students math.
9th grade.
324. 439. 397. 272. ELA is 438. 635. 369. 458. Let's see if it lets us submit without, or go to the next. Yeah, okay. Anyone have suggestions for that?
I just put zeros in for now.
yeah, I would put zeros in and just see if it pushes it through for now at least.
Perfect. All right. Number of students with disabilities overall, is that what we're, yep. 9th grade, 342. 353. 293. 227. This is course failure, overall course.
Count the number of students with disabilities who face failed any course, yes.
194.
This
Oh,
is
that says it.
attendance. I mean, we can go to course performance.
Okay, let's, yeah, that's not worded correctly, then it's tough, so. 194, 206, 212, 139. And then attendance is 69, 57, 45, and 43.
Zeros.
Yep, 6 zeros in there. Math. 82. 4.
What'd you say?
84.
Oh, 84.
80, and 41. English is 112, 132, 85, and 86. Perfect.
Alright.
Okay. Thank you for your time today.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you
it
for
is.
all your support, and we got through another one, so. I will see you in January.
Okay,
Enjoy holidays and everything. They'll probably
yeah,
before we know it.
that's right.
It'll be here
Yeah.
quick as a hiccup at this point.
Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate it,
thank you
Becca.
guys so much. Have a good one.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
Thank you.